Beatriz Angelica Mota was born on February 11, 2008. She was the daughter of Lucina Mota, a congresswoman very interested in social issues, and Sandro Romilton, who worked as an English teacher at the private school Nuestra Señora Auxiliadora de Petrolina, this in the state of Pernambuco, in Brazil. Beatriz and her siblings Samira Mota, the oldest, and Leandro, the youngest, attended this same school. The family lived on a small farm in the rural area of Huacheiro, a city in Brazil, and their economic situation was quite good. They were a close-knit group with no major complications. Beatriz, for her part, was a happy girl, much appreciated by her classmates and teachers. However, any possibility of Beatriz growing up and becoming an equally joyful adult was taken away from her. And when she disappeared, everyone thought she had simply gotten lost wandering the halls of her school.
Searches began within a few minutes. Beatriz? Where are you?
But when they found out what had really happened to her, the entire community was completely horrified. At 8 o'clock on the evening of Thursday, December 10th, the year 2015, the Mota Romilton family attended an event at Our Lady Help of Christian School. It was Samira's graduation, who was finishing her third year of high school. At that time, Beatriz was 6 years old and was very excited about the event. There were about 2,000 people at the place. Being a prestigious institution at the time, the main door had controlled security. Nobody suspected that something terrible could happen in this place. While they waited, however, for the start of the ceremony, Beatriz settled next to her parents and her brother in the stands of the act room. They were wearing some shirts, white shirts, blouse, which they had made with Samira's face as a kind of tribute. However, at 10:09 of the night, the little girl began to feel thirsty. She approached her mother to let her know that she would go down from the stands to go to drink water from the school's drinking fountains. Lucina let her go alone, since the little girl knew the place well. And I repeat to you again, in a place we can say safe, there was no way she could get lost.
The girl was with her mother in the stands when she asked for water. He kissed her and never came back.
The mother continued watching the ceremony, hoping her daughter would return from getting water, while Sandro took some pictures with his students. Everything was laughter and happiness, laughter and fun. But after a few minutes, the little girl's absence became noticeable. Lucina began to get worried, so she decided to get up and look for her daughter among those present. At 22 hours and 25 minutes, she told her husband that the little girl was nowhere to be found. After searching with his wife at 10:43, Sandro decided that the best thing was to inform everyone present about the disappearance. He got on stage, quite distraught, and interrupted the band that was playing to ask for the microphone.
Upon noticing the little girl's disappearance, the father of Beatriz, Professor Sandro Romilton, got up on the stage of the event and called out to the little girl.
By that time, he was hoping that Beatriz had just gotten lost or was playing in some corner of the institution. However, after a while, the father asked for the microphone again. This time, he seemed much more worried. "I've looked everywhere I can think of at the school and I still haven't found my daughter. I'm desperate," that's what he said. Realizing then that the situation was beyond him, the rest of those present joined in the search for the little girl. They searched every corner of the institution until after a while they found her whereabouts, a discovery that left them speechless. It was 10:50 at night when a security guard found Beatriz's body in a storage room where the equipment of a disused gym was kept. The situation was extremely shocking. Among cleaning products, cables, and a large amount of soot that had remained after some students intentionally started a fire a while back and made the little one lifeless. But that wasn't all. She had 42 stab wounds, and the murder weapon, a large sharp knife with a wooden handle, was still embedded in her abdomen.
Shortly after, she was found dead in some sort of storage room. The weapon used to commit the crime was left on Beatriz's body.
Only 41 minutes had passed since Beatriz went out to get water. Her family couldn't understand how during that time someone had taken her life in such a horrific way. It also didn't add up that this had happened in a school with so much security, where a joyful celebration was taking place. By 23 hours, 11 o'clock at night, the military police arrived to lift the lifeless body and transfer it to the city of Huachero, where the autopsy would be carried out, while the rest of those present tried to contain the Mota Romilton without success. The forensic study later revealed that the weapon used to take Beatriz's life left her with 42 wounds on her arms, legs, and abdomen. There were no signs of intimate abuse. For the investigators, this was an expression of extreme violence. Whoever had done this to the little one had done it with a lot of cruelty. Meanwhile, initial investigations began at the discovery site. Since there were no traces of blood outside the closet, the agents thought that Beatriz must have been murdered in the storage room. On the other hand, it also seemed clear that the little girl had not walked or been dragged in there because this type of trace was not visible in that part of the school. The police then began to wonder how the little girl had ended up in the dark closet. They believed that someone had convinced her to go in there, probably someone who knew her. So the motive must have been personal. The killer had wanted to hurt the family and the victim deliberately, or at least that's what the agents thought. The police had two pieces of evidence so far, the blood traces and the fingerprints on the murder weapon. It was valuable for when the suspect appeared, but useless at that instance. Then they set out to collect the images from the school security cameras, but there was a problem. Right in the gym area where the locker was located, they were not working.
The Nuestra Señora Auxiliadora school where Beatriz was murdered was monitored at that time by at least 40 security cameras, but there were no images of the place where the drinking fountains are or the room where the girl was found.
Because of this, the agents theorized that the killer knew the school very well, that he knew that in the place where he took Beatriz's life there was no surveillance and that the cameras were not working. The recordings they were able to get came from the streets near the establishment. In addition, they asked everyone present who had recordings from that night to provide them, including the one from the professional who filmed the ceremony. Everyone wanted to have memories of their children's graduation, so someone must have caught something. Thanks to many of the students and parents of the institution providing videotapes, the agents were able to assemble a timeline. In them, Beatriz is seen sitting near her father at 8:10 in the evening, then at 9:55. He was called to the stage to hand out diplomas to his students. By 10 o'clock, Beatriz moved from the place to sit near her mother. The last time he was seen on camera was at 22.9 minutes, 10.9 minutes when he moved away from Lucina to go to the water fountain. The next images on record were of the victim's family at 22:25 minutes asking about her whereabouts. While the recordings collected up to that point didn't help the investigation much, new testimonies soon arrived. These came from people who claimed to have seen a tall man with straight hair, wearing a green shirt, sitting near the water fountain. Others present stated something similar, that they had seen a person lurking around the bathrooms or coming out of the gym area. This helped Beatriz's father recall an episode that happened the same afternoon of his daughter's murder that he hadn't considered before. According to Sandro, a man in a green shirt had approached two boys from the institution to ask if they could help him carry a table to the auditorium. He thought it must be an attempt to lure them to the same closet where his daughter's body was found. If the children had agreed, as probably happened with Beatriz, they would likely have suffered the same fate. So while this information was very valuable, the reality is that it didn't lead him to any particular person. This man in green was not known to anyone at the school, and there was no way to identify him. Finally, the investigators managed to find more clues, hair samples, and deoxyribonucleic acid under the victim's nails. In case they catch the suspect, they could prove his involvement in the crime with these, but there was still a long way to go. In the face of a lack of answers, different theories began to emerge, both among those following the case and among the agents themselves. The latter thought that there might be more than one person involved in the crime and that in reality Beatriz might have been murdered outside the warehouse and then her body moved there. However, this hypothesis was quickly discarded. It made no sense that in just 41 minutes, the perpetrators could trick Beatriz into accompanying them, kidnap her, stab her, and move her body. Moreover, remain unseen by anyone present. So the police decided to redirect the investigation. They pointed to 5 school employees, 4 males and 1 female. All had several contradictions in their interrogations or had appeared suspiciously nervous. In addition, it was very strange that the light in the hallway that led to the old gym next to the storage room was on. And as if that wasn't enough, just 15 days before the crime, on November 25th, a set of 3 keys had been lost that provided access to absolutely all areas of the school. While the employees had reported their disappearance, they were all fired. Because of this, the agents theorized that the crime could have been a conspiracy among them to take revenge on the institution. On the other hand, those who were following the case began to talk about a completely different motive related to religion. They said that Beatriz could have been used for a black magic ritual, something that happens frequently in some regions of Brazil. Others thought that the little girl had been deliberately chosen as part of a political attack because her mother was a congresswoman. By that time, her family was tired of the police's back and forth. They believed that the case was not being properly investigated, and something happened that supported this. Some images from outside the school were lost. Lucina and Sandro accused the institution of tampering with the crime scene and withholding important information for the investigation. In response to the slow action of the police in May of 2016, Beatriz's family created the YouTube channel Lucina Mota, where the mother talked about the case and about certain manipulation regarding it without giving exact names.
My daughter was taken from my arms in the cruelest way possible. On December 10th of 2015, at the Nuestra Señora Maria Auxiliadora School in Petrolina, Pernambuco, at my daughter Samira Mota's graduation. These murderers cruelly planned this crime in advance. The investigators and case delegates confirmed that this was planned well in advance, that there was a dynamic for this crime to happen. They targeted anyone who was attending that party, but my daughter was the victim. We created this channel so that the information and facts would be shown exclusively and without manipulation.
It wasn't until September of that same year that the police were able to recover the images from around the school that had been lost. In them, you could see the suspect in a green shirt that the witnesses pointed out, walking around the school at 8:30 at night. On the day of the crime, his walk was somewhat strange, and an hour and 9 minutes later, he appeared on another camera talking to someone on the phone. Then he ended the call and tucked a knife into his sock that would allegedly be the responsible weapon. The man in green arrived at the school gate at 9:45 and blended in with the attendees. After that, he could no longer be seen so clearly, but there was one more image, already during the graduation. In it, the suspect crossed the auditorium towards where the water fountain was. The time of the recording was almost the same as when Beatriz got up to go get water and didn't come back. It was exceedingly strange that the man in green didn't appear in other images. He couldn't even be seen leaving the establishment, which heightened the theory that he knew the place very well, and that he knew there were other doors where there were no security cameras. Then, in July of 2018, the police accused a school employee, Alison Enrique de Carvalho, of erasing the images from some of the cameras at the place and interfering with the investigation. This woman was sentenced to preventive prison, but the school's lawyer assured that the videos had not been erased by anyone from the institution, but by the police due to an error in handling the hard drives. Alison's arrest was revoked, and for more than a year, there were no updates regarding the case. On April 6th of the year 2019, Beatriz's remains were exhumed from the family pantheon, located in the Lago da Pedra Cemetery in the state of Maranhão. Until then, the little girl's grave had no identification. A new burial was carried out in the Campo Santo of Petrolina so that family and friends could be closer to her. Relatives and members of the group We Are All Beatriz who demanded justice in the case, participated in this new ceremony. On December 10th of the year 2021, when 6 years had passed since the crime, Beatriz's parents decided to hold a large protest demanding justice. They walked the 700 kilometers separating Petrolina from Recife in 23 days. This demonstration caught the attention of all the media in the country, who showed up at the scene to cover the news. Thanks to this, the case was once again on everyone's lips, and the fact that it had not been resolved became a scandal, putting the police in the public eye. Finally, the parents were received by the Secretary of Social Defense, with whom they had a private meeting. A few days later, on December 28th, Governor Poro Camara announced the dismissal of the criminal expert working on the case, Diego Costa. They wanted to show with this that they were doing everything possible to solve the crime, and the answers would come just 2 weeks later. On January 11th of the year 2022, the forensic police of the Eduardo Campos Forensic Genetics Institute of Recife made a timely revelation. They had spent a long time comparing the deoxyribonucleic acid found on the knife with that of prisoners from different jails across the country. After comparing it with 125 genetic profiles, they arrived at one man. His name was Marcelo da Silva, and he was 40 years old at that time. He had been sentenced in 2017 for robbing a supermarket and was serving his sentence in Salgueiro prison in Sertão, but he had also been accused in 2011 of sexually abusing a 12-year-old girl. That was not the only news, as Da Silva had already been interrogated, and although at first he denied being the person who appeared in the recordings of the areas near the school, he later confessed to being the perpetrator of the crime. In addition, he gave every single detail about how he carried it out. He was charged with the crime on the spot. However, Beatriz's family was not happy to receive the news, as it did not come from the police but from third parties. The person most upset with this situation was Lucina, who said she had asked for the deoxyribonucleic acid test to be done months ago. And the worst part was that the mistreatment towards Beatriz's family would continue. A press conference was organized on January 12th to explain the resolution of the case, and Lucina was prevented from entering to hear the statements. The woman quickly expressed her discontent in the media. Finally, the mother managed to enter with her husband. Then the Secretary of Social Defense said that her intention was to receive the woman only after the press conference. That same day, the Secretary of Social Defense of Pernambuco, Humberto Freire, revealed how Da Silva had carried out this atrocity. The man, who was homeless, broke into the school thinking it was a church. Once inside, he ran into Beatriz, who spotted the knife in his hand. She started screaming, and Da Silva tried to silence her, but when he couldn't, he silenced her by dragging her into the closet and stabbing her to death. But Beatriz's family was not satisfied with this version of events. The robbery and the need to silence the girl seemed to them an unbelievable motive for committing such a heinous crime. They thought it could be a hired killer or an act of revenge against the school. Both the mother and her husband asked for the investigation to be federalized and for the Federal Bureau of Investigation to participate. They even claimed that the deoxyribonucleic acid test was not enough to close the case because there was much more to find out. On Thursday the 13th, Da Silva was transferred to a prison in Greater Recife and placed in a disciplinary cell. In it, the man said he was sorry for the crime and asked his lawyer to tell Lucina that he wanted to speak with her. He also recounted his exact version of the events. On the night of December 10th of the year 2015, Da Silva was intoxicated and without money to return to his home. He thought about stealing a motorcycle, but he couldn't and ended up entering a school, although he thought it was a church. A person noticed his drunkenness and kicked him out, but he re-entered to drink water. He encountered the girl near the water fountain. According to him, the little girl told him she had a knife there, which angered Da Silva. He responded, telling her to shut up, and forced her into the storage room. Once there, he told the little girl to stay quiet, but she started to scream. At that moment, the man decided to take her life with the knife he had on him. Then he went to wash his hands in the bathroom, left the school without any problems, and went to bathe in a nearby river. He even managed to get some people on the street to lend him clean clothes to change into. Despite having heard the murderer himself recounting the night of the crime, Beatriz's family still did not believe that he was the guilty one, or at least that he had been the only one involved, and that everything had been a series of coincidences. Something seemed fishy here. As of the date of this video, Brazilian authorities have not reported on the trial that Da Silva will have to face on the charge of homicide. While he is expected to be sentenced to a long time in prison, which would be added to the sentence he is currently facing for robbing a supermarket, that is not what's important to Beatriz's family.